What is up, my friends? Welcome to the Red Pill Sports and Entertainment Show. I am your host, Albert Apache, and as usual, we are brought to you by Open Source Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Okay, guys, so first and foremost, bear with me. Just coming off of a little bit of a vacation, and I don't know exactly what happened, but it seems like I kind of got a little something in my throat, so I may have to clear my throat here and there. Kind of sipping on some warm coffee to help it out, and so please bear with me as we go through this segment. So, red pill moment, okay, red pill alert. This is not for those easily offended, particularly if you are female or a feminist, or in some other way overly, sensitive on the part of women, okay? So, here we go. When do you need to cut back on Jiu Jitsu, or where do you find the balance for Jiu Jitsu and your home life? What if your wife or your girlfriend tell you that you're training too much Jiu Jitsu and they want to spend time with you? How do you handle this? How do you balance it? Got this question a couple of days ago, or actually it was a couple of weeks ago, and really wanted to address this topic. So here's the thing. Here we go, my friends. Red pill moment. If your girlfriend or wife is telling you train too much jiu-jitsu and you're thinking about cutting back on jiu-jitsu, chances are you maybe need to cut back on your wife or your girlfriend. Yes, I said it. Maybe they are not the female for you. Now, let's face it. I mean, if you're a hobbyist, and when I say hobbyist, I mean somebody who is not currently or in the near future going to make a career, i.e. get paid to train jiu-jitsu. If you're a hobbyist, most likely you're training somewhere between 3 to 6 days a week. And you're training most likely for about an hour to an hour and a half. Now, when your wife or girlfriend says you spend too much time at jiu-jitsu, what do they mean by that? What are we really talking about? If you were going to the gym, a typical gym, for an hour a day, would that be a problem? If you're going to a typical gym for an hour and a half a day, would that be a problem? If you were watching TV for an hour and a half a night, would that be a problem? Now think about that. In today's, internet age, we're talking about if you watch a particular, let's say, Netflix series or Hulu or whatever the case may be, we're talking about maybe, if it's syndicated show, something that's on over-the-air TV as well, we're talking maybe 2 episodes of a particular show. Or we're talking, if it's a Netflix or a cable type show, you're talking maybe 1 episode and a few minutes of scrolling around to see what the heck you're going to watch, right? That's what we're talking about. So if your wife or girlfriend thinks that that's too much time to spend on yourself, something that you enjoy, then you really need to ask yourself whether or not that's the right person for you. And then let's say you are a professional. Let's say you are somebody who, this is how you pay your bills. Well, even more to the point, that's like marrying a doctor and then saying, hey, you spend too much time seeing patients. Oh, you're a lawyer. Oh, you spend too much time looking at cases. Well, you knew I was a lawyer when you married me. You knew I was a doctor when you married me. You knew I was a doctor when you started dating me. What, am I supposed to drop my practice because it offends you that I have to spend time at my, practice, at my vocation, at my, career, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So if you are somebody who this is how you make a living, this is how you pay your bills, even more to the point. Okay? But I don't think that the professional jiu-jitsu practitioner or professional MMA fighter or whoever it may be, combat athlete, I don't think they really run into that problem, to be completely honest. I think that most females who get involved and, marry or otherwise get into a serious long-term relationship with a, professional combat athlete understand that, this is what they do for a living. But it's more so the women who have married a guy or start to date a guy and then he decides that he wants to try jiu-jitsu. And if you'll notice, they're all really, really supportive in the beginning. And let me explain to you why, guys. Because they think it's a phase. They think it's a phase. They think that, he'll be into this jiu-jitsu thing for a couple of months. I remember when, I was a little kid and my brother wanted to do karate, and he did karate for a couple of months, and then, it, like any other new toy, it got pushed aside, right? They don't understand that you're a man and this is something that you want to do and you enjoy it. So you really need to ask yourself what's going on, why they wouldn't want you to train jiu-jitsu. Like, why would you not? It's helping your health, right? It's making you healthy. It's definitely a stress relief, okay? It's absolutely a stress relief. For most people find that they lose weight while they're doing jiu-jitsu. If they happen to be overweight, they tend to lose weight. If they had issues with muscle mass, they start to find that they're gaining a little bit of muscle, a lot of, some lean muscle mass. Not tons, like if you were to, specifically weight train or resistance train, but, there is resistance involved. You increase your flexibility, you increase your cardiovascular endurance, right? And so all of those things are net positives. So why would somebody tell you not to do that? Well, in my opinion, it comes back down to, it's two factors, okay? It's two factors. And the number one factor is that jiu-jitsu is a masculine world. Now, that doesn't mean there is not females in jiu-jitsu, okay? It means that it's slanted towards a masculine view. It's a meritocracy. Nobody really cares how you feel during a roll, like, oh, I feel like I should have tapped you, so therefore I should be declared the winner. It's a meritocracy. Either you tapped or you didn't tap. It's pretty black and white. There's not a whole lot of gray area, and it's very testosterone friendly, if you will. Most likely, and this is something that you can look at anthropologically. You can kind of dig into the data, but there's data and research that suggests that hanging out in a testosterone-filled room, in a masculinely charged room, will raise your testosterone level in turn. Okay? So because of that, that will start to slant and change your outlook on life. So let's say you've always been a very pushover type person. After a while, when you start to train jiu-jitsu, things start to be put into perspective. You realize what truly is a threat and what really isn't a threat. You understand that, hey, if I can survive this, I can, it'll be okay. Everything will be okay. And if I have to tap, I'll tap and then I'll try again. Like, it changes your perspective on life's challenges. But not only does it do that, but because it is a masculine world and because it is a testosterone-friendly environment, right, it will tend to make you a little more assertive as a man. And this will start to emanate off of you when you're with your significant other, right? Now, I'm going to be really honest, and this might hurt some people's feelings, particularly women, but I have to tell you what my red pill truth is. Among gay men, I don't really see this as much of an issue, right? Know that there are gay men that train in jiu-jitsu. I don't ever hear like their partners, I never heard a gay jiu-jitsu practitioner, gay man practitioner say, oh, well, my boyfriend says I train too much jiu-jitsu. Like, I've never heard that. And I'm assuming that's because of the match testosterone level, right? Like, it doesn't really affect them. However, women, because our society as a whole has become much, much softer, much more feminine, and this is, without a doubt, there is research to back this up, that, we have less and less testosterone in our boys, right? My testosterone level is not as high as my grandfather's, my son's testosterone level on average, I'm talking on average, is not as high as mine. And so when you start to train with other men and you're essentially doing combat, right, your body's going to adapt, your testosterone levels are going to kick in, your alpha male tendencies are going to start to manifest, right? And as they do that, and that presents itself in the rest of your life, that can become a huge shock to the system for the female that you're with. And she's going to feel very uncomfortable with that. Because what's going to happen is, rather than you catering to her like you've been taught to do, right? That's what society teaches us to do as men, is cater to her. I mean, you hear this ridiculously laughable statement of happy wife, happy life. That's the most untrue statement I've ever heard in my life. If you make your wife too happy, she's always going to be unhappy, right? The bar is going to get ridiculously raised, because in essence, she's waiting for you to be the man and take charge. Okay, she's waiting for you to actually be the leader of your family. So, you're going to, this confidence, this newfound masculinity, this newfound boost in your testosterone levels, what it's going to do is make her uncomfortable. It's going to make her uncomfortable. You're going to find yourself, most likely, whether or not you know it, and she's going to accuse you of it. She's going to say, you're different. You're changing. You're not the same. Now, before you get defensive about that, let's be honest. After doing jiu-jitsu for 6 months, you will be different. You did definitely change. You will change. You will not be the same person. That being said, that's a good thing. What a boring world. How sad if you were exactly the same person your entire life and you never grow and you never change for the better. How absolutely sad. So you will be a different person. It will make her uncomfortable. Now further, here's the other thing, right? Here's the other part of that. Because and these play off of each other. The other part that's going to make her really uncomfortable, and the reason why she's going to say to you, and these are specifically the females that will tell you that you need to cut back on jiu-jitsu, right? The other reason why she'll say that is because our society has now come to a point where women they are deluding themselves, okay, by saying ridiculous things about the dad bod, right? And you hear this now, oh, well, the dad bod, it's sexy and blah, blah. And the reason why it's like, here's the reason why it's sexy, guys, right? Before you go and stuff another Twinkie down your face, okay, the reason why it's sexy is because a guy who's in shape, they look at that guy and think, oh, he won't have time for me. He's too into taking care of himself. How absolutely selfish is that? How absolutely selfish is that? Oh, I know that, men die of heart attacks way sooner, but the person I get with, I want them to be slightly overweight with a high cholesterol level so that they can spend time with me and make me happy and die early. Essentially, that's, because they don't really care about whether or not you're taking care of yourself. They care about whether or not you're taking care of them. Okay? So the dad bod, that kind of idea, this concept, it's a delusional concept because women don't really mean it, right? Because if women really meant it, Jason Momoa would not be as popular as he is, right? Women wouldn't have lost their heads when Thor got fat. Okay, it just is not a true statement. Okay, now again, there has been some research, and of course it's kind of frowned upon, because anytime there's research that tends to point out the differences between men and women, and that there is an absolute difference. That type of research is frowned upon, okay? Because that's not where our culture is at today, right? It's all about, no, we're all the same, not, hey, we're different. Now, that being said, okay, there is research that suggests that women do find the dad bod, beta male body and individual a bit more attractive during certain times of the month. And that's when she's further away from her ovulation time, right? But that same research suggests that she's looking for an alpha male and becomes attractive to the alpha male as she gets closer into her ovulation time period, i.e. when she can get pregnant, when she's fertile. Now, you can disagree with that. You can say, oh, this is ridiculous. Where's this research? Look, I'm not going to do your research for you. I went around, I found it myself. If you're not interested in it and you don't want to look for it, I'm not spoon feeding you. Okay? That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to provide commentary and give my opinion, and that's what I do. I give you my red pill truth. Okay? Since truth has become subjective. So, gentlemen, my friends, if a woman that you're with starts to express that jiu-jitsu is too big a part of your life, before you change anything about your jiu-jitsu schedule, you need to step back and ask yourself, why would she say that? Why would anybody not want you to do something that is good for you, that makes you happy? And she's probably going to say, you're obsessed, right? You're obsessed with this. And again, that's because you're taking her off the pedestal. In her mind, she thinks you're taking her off the pedestal. It's okay if you're obsessed with her in a way that she finds comfortable, but she doesn't want you to be obsessed with anything else. Okay? Now, she might say the right things, and I want you to be passionate about things. I want you to live life. I want you to be happy. But this is just too much. You're obsessive. And that's where you need to say, okay, well, what's going on? Because if this was a woman, right? Let's say it was a woman, and we were talking about, something else. Let's say it was yoga. Let's say she was doing yoga, okay? Or Pilates, because I know a lot of women tend to, go that route. Or maybe it was a spin class, okay? Maybe it was a Peloton bike. If she was really into her Peloton bike and she did this 3 to 5 times a week, let's say 7 times a week, and she spent an hour to an hour and a half on that bike, and you came along and told her after a while, after you encouraged her to do it, right? And then you said, well, now it's getting to be a bit much. You need to back away from that. You're spending too much time doing that. What would be the narrative, gentlemen? What would be the narrative? I can tell you right now that 9 times out of 10, the narrative would be, you're controlling. You're sabotaging her. So stop for a minute when you hear this and understand that maybe they're not the right person for you. Maybe, just maybe, you were a little quick to pull the trigger on either getting married or deciding to date this person, and they presented themselves as being somebody that they weren't. And this happens more often than you would think, okay? So be wary, gentlemen. Take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself and you can't love yourself, right? You can't be good to yourself without incurring criticism from your significant other, you need to tread lightly before making decisions. Okay, guys, that's all I got on that topic for today. I'm sure we'll revisit it. I'm sure we'll hear about, oh, hey, blah, 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 what about, this and what about that? And, I'm sure there will be women sooner or later that comment, oh, you're a sexist and blah, 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 and whatever else, old-fashioned and whatever else, misogynist, yada, yada, yada. Look, it'll be what it'll be. My interest is in ensuring that you, gentlemen, that do jiu-jitsu, continue to do jiu-jitsu. And this actually goes for women as well. If you're a women practitioner of jiu-jitsu and you're with a man that tells you that you do it too much and he has an issue with you rolling with other dudes and well, I don't like the fact that you're in that guy's guard and in between his legs, or he's in between your legs and blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't have the sack and he doesn't have the stones to get on the mat himself. You got a problem. And you really need to think about whether or not he's the right guy for you before you stop doing jiu-jitsu. I just honestly see that issue much more rarely than I see the wife or girlfriend asking for a guy to stop doing jiu-jitsu. So, all right, guys, and let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Okay, guys, so in this next segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl and what's been going on with the analysis after the fact. Now, I wanted some time to rewatch the game a couple of times, look at where the Niners lost the game, and a lot of blame and shade is being thrown at Shanahan as far as the coaching staff goes. And I think we tend to forget that the coaching staff is made up of more than one man. Yes, the head coach does carry the bulk of the responsibility. That being said, I feel like some of the other areas of the coaching staff are getting a pass, and I don't understand why. And it's either, it's a few things. It's probably one of the big playing in factors is that, he has a more famous name, Shanahan. It's a more famous coaching name. Second, I do believe that he does come across as being Caucasian, so, they're not going to take the shine away from the Hispanic head coach, Robert Saleh. Because of course there's this big push for quote unquote diversity. I think it's silly myself, being a Native American, Hispanic, half Native American, half Hispanic. I think it's silly, but hey, that's just my opinion. That being said, I went back, like I said, I rewatched this game, and while you can point to some things that Shanahan had problems with, that maybe he made the wrong call, I think mostly those come down to not being prepared to play from behind, having a little bit too much trust in his defense, because some of the offensive formations were pretty standard. They weren't what we would usually consider typical 2-minute warning, 2-minute drill type offenses. So with that, I really want to focus on Robert Saleh. I really feel that, Robert Saleh and his defense lost this game for the 49ers. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter with about 10 minutes left in the game. They didn't get any kind of the Kansas City Chiefs didn't really get any traction until about 7 minute mark, and so essentially they had a 10 point lead with 7 minutes left on the clock. Robert Saleh's defense gave up some ridiculous big plays, playing a soft zone defense in which they completely lost track of receivers. I believe it was Watkins that had the first really big play that got the Chiefs going. I think they were down at like the 20, and it was like third and long or something like that, and they played a ridiculously soft zone. Never got any kind of pressure on Mahomes, or let him scramble out a little bit and find a window, and he hit Watkins down deep on really bad technique by the safety. And yet, I'm not hearing anybody talk about Robert Saleh. This is exactly why this guy does not have a head coaching position. Robert Saleh and his defense had three test runs for this Super Bowl. Okay. Actually, I could say they faced three quarterbacks to get them prepared for the Super Bowl. They had 5 games. They had Russell Wilson twice. They had Kyler Murray twice. And they had Lamar Jackson once. They had 5 games to fill in the holes that they had in their defense, to come up with something when you have an athletic, scrambling quarterback. And what I saw was they broke down and they had the exact same problems that they had against those type of quarterbacks the entire season. Now, people are going to, point blame at, Shanahan and Garoppolo, because traditionally the head coach and the quarterback get the bulk of the responsibility, the bulk of, the blame, the bulk of the praise, and the bulk of the credit. That being said, it was a San Francisco defense that basically crumbled at about the 7 minute mark. Further, Robert Saleh comes from the Legion of Boom Seattle defense. And what I've noticed as a Cowboy fan, because of course, they play a similar style, because now or not anymore, but at the time their defensive play caller essentially came from that same system. You saw it cost the Niners big when they gave up the lead with the touchdown. And what had happened was that the defensive back never turned around to play the ball. There's this technique that they love to play in that style of defense where they keep their eyes on the receiver, they run with the receiver, and they don't put their hands up or make a play to the ball until they see the wide receiver's hands come up. Now, 4 years ago, this was a great technique when people were not being coached for it. Now that the league is wise to this technique, it's being coached for, right? It's being coached for. And so the defensive back never turns around, never gets his head turned, and it's a penalty that brings the ball all the way down to the 1 yard line. So essentially, San Francisco had 5 dry runs, 5 test runs to get ready for this type of quarterback, for this type of situation. And yet, they could not get prepared. Now, people are talking about, I'm hearing some of these talking heads talk about, oh, well, let's get rid of Garoppolo, let's sign Tom Brady, it'll be, the thing that puts them over the hump, and blah, blah, blah. I absolutely disagree with that. I mean, it would be fun, don't get me wrong. I think it'd be absolutely fun to watch. That being said, I don't feel like that was what ended up doing the Niners in. It wasn't the offense. okay? Because Garoppolo did put a beautiful ball right into Kittle's hands late in the game, and it got called on kind of a ticky-tack pass interference call. Like, you've been allowing this contact the entire game, and now you're going to decide that you're going to call because he straightened out his arm. Like, it's just comes down to one of those frustrating things about consistency. And I'm not a Niner fan. I was rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm going to call it like I see it. And the reality was that they had been letting that kind of contact go the entire game, and then they decided at a very inopportune time that now this was not going to be acceptable contact, and that can be frustrating. It really can set you up for failure as a player because you get used to being able to use a certain technique, you get used to being able to have certain kind of contact and throughout the game, and you get into a flow, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh nope, now that's going to be a penalty. So I don't think it was Garoppolo's bad play that did the Niners in. I think that all in all, when it came down to it, the fact was that the Niner defense basically folded. It folded. You know, all the talk about Bosa, this, that, and the other. When they needed him to make the big play, he wasn't there. But it seems like the San Francisco defense is flying completely under the radar, like as if they weren't part of the game. I mean, they gave up something in the neighborhood of what was it, 21 points in 7 minutes? Some ridiculous number like that. Now, granted, I know that, the last couple points were cheap points, but they gave up 14 points in 7 minutes when it was still a game. That, and it wasn't even 7 minutes. It was like 5 minutes or 6 minutes, something like that. It wasn't even the full 6 or 7 minutes. It was a very reduced amount of time they gave up that lead. And this 49er defense is not being held accountable. And so you can bring in whoever you want at quarterback. You can fire Shanahan if you want. But the reality of the situation is that this San Francisco defense folded like a lawn chair late in that game. That's what happened. And I know it's not what people want to hear because they like Bosa and they like Saleh because they're likable guys. They really are. And it's the easy, cookie cutter thing to go blame the quarterback and blame, the head coach because, well, the buck stops with them. Yeah, but, as a leader, I can say this as a leader, when you delegate certain responsibilities out to people, that's their mission, right? Yes, the general does shoulder the blame, does take on the responsibility, but a lot of times that means that if Shanahan wants to win, he's really got to look at Saleh and whether or not he's bringing that guy back, because that defense is not going to have any easier time next year against these same type of quarterbacks. Okay, guys, let's move on to the next topic. Okay, guys, so UFC 247 wrapped up last night. Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes, and by far it did end up being the most interesting and one of the most entertaining fights on the card. Now, with all those nice things being said, I'm just going to say it was a horrendous, absolutely unforgivable decision that Jon Jones retained the light heavyweight title. I rewatched this fight. I rewatched the third round and fourth round about 3 times. I rewatched the fight once. And the reality is that Dominic Reyes by far easily won round 1, round 2, and round 3. I don't know what else the judges could have possibly wanted out of Dominic Reyes. I really have no idea what he could have done better or more efficiently, or how he could have controlled the pace, done more damage, landed more significant strikes. I mean, by any metric that you want to measure, Dominic Reyes won that part of the fight. rounds 1 through 3. He absolutely won them. The only thing you could possibly argue is that Jon Jones, it was right around, I want to say, mid second round. It was towards the end of the first and towards the end of the second. It was already about 3 minutes into each round, 3.5 minutes into each round, where you could see Dominic would get a little bit tired and he would start to come, and Jon Jones would start to come forward, and Dominic would back up, and then he would counterpunch. The problem with that is that essentially you're either a completely ignorant fight judge because you've never heard of Muhammad Ali, you've never clearly heard of Willie Pep, you've never heard of anybody who's a defensive fighter and can still win the fight while they're playing defense and moving back and picking somebody apart. I mean, the first couple of rounds, especially early in those rounds, 1 through 3, Dominic Reyes dominated Jon Jones. Like it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. For from the start of the bell to about 3.5 minutes, maybe close to 4. Okay, Dominic Reyes won those rounds. He took off the back part of those rounds, and very smartly so. He took off the back part of those rounds so that he could re-energize. And while he was taking off those back part of the rounds, now some people might come in and say, well, Jon Jones was able to steal the end part of the round. No, he was never able to steal the end part of rounds 1, 2, or 3. And I really, really suggest you rewatch this fight with no volume to see exactly what I saw, which was Dominic Reyes was backing up, and as Jon Jones was coming forward, he was still picking him up. He still never allowed Jon Jones to get a rhythm. Some of the things that Dominic Reyes did beautifully in this fight was he committed to going to the body. And he committed to going to the body early, and he also used it as a way to break Jon Jones' rhythm and a way to keep Jon Jones from establishing his range. He did it. He did an awesome job. Now, you can argue that Reyes won round 4 even, because while Jon did get the takedown, the very first takedown that Jon Jones hit in the fight was early on in the 4th round. I want to say it was right about a minute and a half in, he hit that takedown. But the reason Jon even shot for that takedown was because Dominic had just rocked him. Reyes rocked him. And it was a desperation shot to get the fight to the ground, to turn it into a grappling match, because Jon Jones had to do that. He had to go back to his base, which was wrestling. That being said, he took down Reyes and did absolutely nothing with the takedown. He did absolutely nothing. He didn't score any points. He didn't score any damage. So you can argue that Reyes won the 4th round based on the fact that he did more significant damage. So it makes absolutely no sense how these judges scored this for Jon Jones. Jon Jones definitely did not ever score a 10-8 round. The round 4 and round 5 were not 10-8 rounds. Now, anybody who says that Jon won any rounds 1 through 3, honestly, you're going to have to put together a video and break down for me every single strike and show me exactly how Jon Jones won one of those first 3 rounds, because he didn't. He absolutely didn't. And anybody who says he does clearly has Jon Jones love blinders on, because there's no way he won those rounds. He didn't get any takedowns. He didn't land more significant strikes. He never got into a rhythm. He never had Reyes rocked. And Reyes dropped him. Reyes dropped Jon Jones. He scored a knockdown. Now, I don't know if that's how they scored it on the judge's scorecard, but it should have been, because it was clearly due to a strike. It was clearly due to a strike. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that what we're seeing now, the new established paradigm is that you don't just have to beat the champion. You don't just have to beat him anymore and be pretty convincing. Now, essentially, the paradigm that these judges are putting in place is that you must KO the champ. And that's utterly ridiculous and unfair to the challenger. You're making it a nearly insurmountable task, because essentially the champ can cover up and just be okay. And that's another issue I had, especially in rounds 1 through 3. Okay, rounds 1 through 3. How are you going to tell me that Jon Jones won any of those rounds when literally when he got hurt, just like he did against Santos, and he's been doing this for years. The only difference now was it was super exaggerated because Dominic Reyes did not allow him to rest. He chased him down and made him defend properly. What Jon Jones likes to do and what he did in this fight was when he got stung early in those first rounds, first, second, and third rounds, he would post, he covers up with the right, and he turned away from Dominic Reyes and literally ran away from the action. You cannot tell me that that warrants winning rounds. You can't convince me. Not as a fight fan. You can never convince me of that. So anyhow, guys, that's what I got. Sorry, I know this is coming out a bit late. Usually I try to get them out by Friday, but hey, it is what it is. I think I'm going to try and do a morsel. I really want to talk about Dak and the contract disputes that are going on. Also, I got to put my 2 cents in what's going on with ESPN and their commentators and the UFC and MMA. It's just they're getting a little bit ridiculous. So, anyhow, guys, that's what we got for the show today. Thanks for listening. I don't generally mention it, but please, if you like what you're hearing and it's fun, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, do what you got to do. And we're also going to start trying to put together some technique and rolling videos and things of that nature so that, we're more than just chit-chatting about sports. So, all right, man. We'll talk to y'all later. In the meantime, remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose.